I mean, you've hit the nail on the head about, one of the most probably the biggest challenge of being an asset manager is, you've got to make sure that you believe that the work that's going to be done is going to enhance the asset. And, you've got to make that argument to your ownership groups. And, a lot of times they're reticent to do that project. And so you've got to be confident in what you're presenting and show the need. I always say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And that's the biggest thing that I use when I'm trying to convince our owners to make an expenditure is I'll show them, make sure I've been out to the property recently and show them the pictures and say, look at this. Is this, what you want to experience as a guest? If you don't do this, what's the next bad thing that's going to happen as a result because you haven't put that capital into whether it's preventative or even if it's not preventative, even if it's too far gone, it can get worse. Not to mention the liability. I mean, you've got a big hole in your parking lot, and you've got a guest that stumbles into that and falls and hurts himself. Well, obviously, you've got a big problem. So, just making sure they understand all aspects of the risk of not doing it. Well, I certainly didn't expect to be in the hospitality business. It was not even on my radar at all. I studied finance. I got my bachelor's degree many, many years ago. And, when I graduated, came back to Houston and thought, what to do now. It was the mid 80s and Houston was suffering from an oil bust and weren't a lot of opportunities. But I was 2 weeks out of school and panicked because I didn't have a job. So I called a CPA that I had worked for during my summer holidays and told her I was back in Houston looking for a job. And she said, well, I'm doing some consulting for a company based here in Houston that are in the hotel business. And they are looking for somebody to join them. They had two employees that were both happened to be leaving at the same time. So they were quite anxious to hire somebody. So the next day I went for an interview with them and that was a Thursday and I got hired that day and started on a Friday, which should have been my first clue that I was in for a wild ride because they wouldn't even let me wait until Monday. But both both of their staff were leaving, so I had to get a quick download. And they were, I mean, this was back in the day when everything was done by hand still. We didn't even have a computer. We had a typewriter. I mean, I'm really aging myself here, I know. But it was exciting to be in a place where I got to see tremendous growth. And here was a family business, and the principals were in their 20s. They were buying hotels and all over the country. They were had originally come from Africa. They had lost their businesses there, the family business, and the children all moved to Canada and then eventually into the US and started buying hotels. And so I got to be, at the ground level of the company and was able to work side by side with the principals and really learn the business and was given many opportunities over the years, which is why I stayed. I've never gotten bored. I, was always given the chance when I showed initiative or things I wanted to learn. They were always gracious about letting me kind of stumble my way through. And even though I didn't have any kind of hospitality background or experience, I've never checked in a guest in my years in the business and never worked actually in a hotel. So it's kind of that fake it till you make it, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
before we get to the substantive questions, I'm fascinated as a Gen Z myself. Um, Tell me about that transition from a time where you were doing everything by hand to today where everything is by computer. Do things just happen quicker now or at a higher volume? What are some of the main things that you're noticing that have revolutionized the industry?
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, I feel like it's hard to keep up, with all the technology changes. I mean, to think about in my career where things were compared to today, obviously those are massive, massive changes. We didn't, when I went to go book a flight, it was you called all the airlines. You didn't just go on Google and do a search. You you just had to do everything manually. We started with one computer. That was a big deal. I remember us all standing around this one computer, just being fascinated by it, and everybody taking their turn at when they needed to do something. And we were doing our financial statements all of a sudden on a computer, which was so thrilling. And then to go through the days where we were able to actually do everything on the internet and search and all the things that we now take for granted. I mean, I think about how long it took to get anything done back then because everything was so manual. And so then all of a sudden now getting into the thoughts of everything, all the AI and all that now is just I feel like so much is changing fast, and how to kind of keep up with all of it plus still do your day job is difficult, because I think there's a lot of learning opportunities, but I guess you just learn by doing, from what I'm told. So I do feel like I'm a little overwhelmed by all of it, all of the latest technology changes. But we'll get there, and we'll make it happen. It'll become you know it'll be part of our routine very soon, and it probably already is for you guys. But um, I'm just excited about the things that the latest technologies will be able to do for us in every aspect of our business.
Great. Yeah, for sure. It's nice to remain a little bit cautiously optimistic for now. And I think that you're in a great position because you can kind of what's the saying, see the forest and not necessarily the trees. Just kind of step back and don't get too involved in the nitty gritty of learning each individual tool. You can kind of determine like, hey, what's actually going to be useful for us, and let's kind of take this at a more measured approach.
Yeah, definitely feel like I've got a lot to learn, but excited about what it can actually do for us. So we'll see.
S- So, so Doreen, I have a question for you. You were very instrumental in Westmont's growth. Can you tell us, some highlights over the years, in the growth of Westmont, and just kind of tell us about the journey a bit?
Sure. I mean, when I first joined the company, the way we grew our portfolio was just really one by one hotels. It was just buying single assets, looking at opportunities, getting to know the brokerage community because they were so instrumental in bringing deals to us. Just really making the connections that would last over the life of my career. But what was really exciting was when we did our first big portfolio deal, and we took on, this was mid 90s. We took on about 20 hotels at once, so that was a huge platform. We were all of a sudden working with major institutions, whereas before we had worked a lot with, I would say, other mom and pop type operators running our hotels. So now we were partnering with the big boys, and that was exciting to see, how you have to staff up for that, and all the functions of the reporting for Wall Street firm and that kind of thing. So that was exciting. And then you know, not long after we were moving into Canada, we started doing more things internationally. I mean, Westmont went from being, a very small company with just, three principals to being an international player. And, I know over the course of my career, we became at one point, I think, the largest Holiday Inn franchisee. We became the largest DoubleTree franchisee. We probably were known as one of the largest, if not the largest, privately held owner operators worldwide. I mean, it was just amazing to see the kind of growth over that period of time. And I would say those are the things that stand out. And then for me personally, just the ability to go from starting as an admin assistant slash office manager to getting an opportunity to be an asset manager, which was a bit of a fluke. I took it on in the late 90s, said, well, I'll do this until you can hire somebody. And I'll just bluff my way through it. And here I am 25 years later, doing the same thing. And at one point, I was asset managing 200 Red Roof Inns. When we bought that company, we still own the brand. And a lot of the real estate we've sold off to our franchisees, but I still do oversee today the remaining corporate owned Red Roof Inns and have been very involved on the brand side as well in prior years. So those are
Amazing.
some of the highlights for me.
Love it.
So tell us a little bit about, like, you've seen a lot of success in Westmont and in your career. From an educational perspective, there's a lot of the new generation coming in, and somebody might be looking at themselves and thinking, hey, I might be that next asset manager, somebody who's going to be going into the industry and has that keen eye. Um, Give us a little bit of a intro advice on what you think it might take to be a successful asset manager in that day-to-day need for this individual to make it in the industry.
Well, I think asset management is a lot more than the operational side of the hospitality business. There's a big real estate component, obviously, because as an asset manager, we're typically making the decisions. Sometimes, we're helping the acquisitions team decide whether this is the right project to pursue. But certainly, we want to make sure that it's being bought correctly because you obviously set the stage there. If you buy wrong, then you're fighting an uphill battle the whole way through the investments. So getting a good start at the beginning is critical. We're obviously along the lines making sure of any kind of uh, capital expenditures. What's the best use of those dollars? When is the right time to sell? Those are things that are so critical. You've got to make sure that you want to obviously be trying to sell at the peak, but you're trying to figure out, is there upside? Do you want to leave something for the next guy, hopefully, but also try to, make sure that you've um, made the most of the investment over its lifetime. So, um, but from an educational standpoint, I think, I mean, if I had to do it over and I knew I was going to be an asset manager, I'd certainly would have studied hospitality. I would have tried to go to Cornell or one of the other great hotel schools. We have a great one here in Houston, at University of Houston. So, we're blessed to have that here in our backyard. Um, but, I always say, I never had time to get my master's degree. I was working, I thought very hard back in the day. And then, I had a young family. I was uh, blessed to have as well. So, it's juggling all those things that we all do as parents and as spouses with our. So, um, I was fortunate to work for and with some people that I always said it was the best master's degree that I never got because I learned so much just being side by side with these people that practical experience can sometimes be much more than what you get sitting at a university.
Agreed.
But not everybody gets that chance like I did.
Yeah, agreed. And even fewer people pay attention, when they that chance is presented to them.
So
Yeah,
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 go ahead, Yas.
it's true.
I I kind of wanted to piggyback off of that. So a lot of the industry has shifted to franchise model. You're not seeing a lot of like managed by the flags anymore. Man or owned and managed. That's kind of going by the wayside. So is there you got any insight for us on what's kind of leading that franchise model as a priority for all the major flags?
Well, the hotel business is obviously probably, if not the most intensive real estate investment that you can have, right? So if you think about an office building, you're leasing that every 5 years, every 10 years, whatever. You look at an apartment building, maybe it's every year you're leasing that. Say, I mean, we're leasing our space every day. So there's so much that is involved and so many aspects of running a hotel and is simply that it's less intensive. There's you're collecting a revenue stream based on the performance of the hotels, but you're not actually the one who's having to run the day to day. Don't get me wrong, having been involved on the franchise side of a business, it's there's a lot of work to it and it's very intensive as well. But I just feel as though the brands are recognizing that um, the simpler model may be more on being the franchisor as opposed to the operator.
Makes sense.
We have an interesting story from when we were younger gents. We were working at the recommended hotel of our university, and it was about 12 miles away. It wasn't the most ideal location. I mean, it was a good property at the end of the day, but we experienced one new GM every quarter for the duration of our college career. So yeah, I mean, it was great for us because we were like, all right, we get to pick the good. You could see some of the managers that didn't have it all together on a day-to-day basis. They did some things better than the general managers that were lights out in certain aspects, right? So we had the nads to call Bill Marriott. We cold called him, and a couple weeks later, we fielded a phone call from Bill Marriott, and he sent his regional vice president of area development at the time, Ray Bennett, amazing gentleman. And he was like, "You guys want to build a hotel here?" I was like, "No, no, no, no. Like, I know how it looks right now, but here, let us show you the master plan for Rowan Boulevard, which was connecting the university itself to historic downtown Glassboro." And we showed him the plan. And long story short, it was that courtyard is standing at Rowan University today. So that was our little foray into development. But I have to say, it's a part of the business that's really exciting. I was an operator much longer, but development is honestly such an exciting because you're building that pipeline. You see everything that's coming down the pipe, and it's just something that that stays with me to this day. It's been almost 20 years since that's happened, and it's like one of my highlights, I feel, from my time in the industry. So, um,
I still look at development completely differently now. Every time I see a new hotel go, I go, okay, where are the demand generators? Well, what's the traffic? Things that I never would have thought to think of previously. It really comes to the forefront of my mind.
Well,
now
that's a very part of the business, I've got to say. I mean, we tended to over the years do mostly acquisitions, and because new development obviously takes a long time to get off the ground,
Sure.
and you've got money going out the door and none coming in.
Yep.
So I always say it's not for the faint of heart, and truly the fact that you guys called Mr. Marriott uh, tells me you're not faint of heart either, but that also shows you why they are where they are is because, he picks up the phone and calls people, and
Yep.
I've heard
Yep.
stories about him and the rest of the team there, and he's what a legacy he's created, and continues to have people that look at things the way he did.
Agreed.
I feel blessed that we had the opportunity. Even that small moment meant so much, right? Um,
Oh,
so
imagine.
I got a question for you. Another one. I'm thinking about, like, okay, so there's a lot of folks that have done operations for a long time, right? If they wanted to make that shift from, just operating hotels in a day to day and wanted to take that shift to owner operator, do you have any good advice for folks that wanted to go down that road?
Oof, there's so many aspects to that. I mean, um, you know, it- first of all, you obviously have to have some sense of how to put a deal together, and get your financing and get your equity lined up. I mean, there's a lot of pieces and parts, and I think you have to be prepared for that and be prepared for a lot of rejection along the way. And I think you have to be very patient. You've got to, obviously location, location, location. You've got to figure all that out first before you even start trying to present to somebody. But it's, you know, have I thought about it over the years and thought, wow, I want to own my own hotel? Oh, for a brief second. Then it goes
You're right.
What
You're right.
stops you?
um, I don't know that I'm afraid of risk, but I like the security that comes from, being part of a company that, I trust will always be there. And, they've been incredibly loyal to me over the years. And I just feel like that's where I belong. For somebody else, I've seen it over and over where people in our organization have left and done things on their own and have been successful, or in different levels of success. But, um, for me, it was not really something that I aspired to do. I like so much what I'm doing and can't imagine doing anything else. Maybe I don't want to
I
work that hard either.
I
It's hard work to own a
did. I noticed that you guys, you focus your investments primarily and I think exclusively on hotels. Is there a reason why it hasn't expanded into the apartment community business and the restaurant business and conference centers and some of the other forms of assets that you could potentially dip your toes into? Is it just a story of doing what you already know and kind of protecting yourself from that risk, or is there a broader reason why you've decided to kind of keep your portfolio to hotels?
Well, it's interesting because the stories that I heard even before I joined, were the stories of when, um, the family that I work for first came to North America and, left behind um, businesses that were taken over by Idi Amin. And so, where they lost all their investments. They came and started over, started very small, and um, you know, eventually got to the hotel business. They were in apartments and things like that, and then they saw the great prospects in the hotel business and started very small, with a 40, 50 unit property in Seattle and grew from there. So kind of started from that apartment, moved into hotels. But today, our company is not only global, but we're doing things outside of the hotel space. It's not, people don't really know about it too much. And we're very, I would say our owners are very humble and don't get out there and talk a lot about what they're doing, but we are doing other things. It's just that, those of us here in the US, we're really focused on the hotel side. But it's interesting. I'll tell you a quick story. So when I first joined, um, Westmont had two businesses really. It was dry cleaning stores and hotels. And the reason behind that was the dry cleaners did well in the winter because everybody was dry cleaning their clothes. In the summer, not so much. So the hotels would then had the opposite cycle. So the idea was that they, fed off each other, which I thought was very interesting. Then we got to a point where the hotels kind of overtook everything, and there wasn't enough time to focus on those smaller businesses, so they were sold off. But it was interesting to me how that mindset they had put that together to how to address the seasonality of the businesses.
Love that. I bet you that dry cleaning was easy at those hotels, right? To get the dry cleaning done for those tickets. Such a challenge today.
Right?
Like when you open up a property, it's a nightmare to try to find a company that actually caters to what people have come, to expect when they're staying at a hotel. So,
Yeah, can you imagine being in Houston, Texas, where it's, 100 degrees about 7 months out of the year and being in a dry cleaning store and, with all those
yeah,
hot machines and what a nightmare.
I can imagine.
not easy to say the least.
No.
Um,
So let's talk about the industry outlook a little bit. Just to kind of get started, what are you seeing the most opportunity in right now, asset wise, in the various sectors of hospitality, or even maybe an exciting brand that you've noticed that's entered your portfolio, something to kind of keep an eye on?
Well, I have to say there, there's a lot of focus right now on the extended stay um, businesses, and I
Mhm.
I also am a big fan of that sector. I think that, a lot of our hotels, we have that some of that component already. Um, Even with just having a refrigerator and a microwave, drawing on
Mhm.
that kind of business. But we're just seeing so many brands come into that space. I know at Red Roof, we added on the Hometown Studios by Red Roof, and that's been a big part of our growth recently. So, investors are keen on those. And, primarily because they're so much more profitable in the sense that obviously you're cleaning the rooms less. Um, Maybe some of the brands obviously have it where they are not open 24 hours at the front desk. So you just have such an opportunity to drive that bottom line, which is so difficult right now with, cost of labor and cost of insurance and property taxes and all the components that go into operating a hotel. So anything you can get into where you can minimize the cost is obviously a big win. So that's a segment that I'm pretty bullish on. Right now it's difficult. It's been a tough market. A lot of our hotels are in the economy space. So coming out of COVID, we recovered very quickly. Our full service hotels took a lot longer to come back. And while I would say, most of them are back, what the difficult markets for that I've seen are convention markets. We're just not seeing
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
the recovery in those, and some of those markets surprised me that really used to be very good markets just still have today not come back. Um, so that's an area of difficulty, I think, for us. And now with what's going on, in kind of the macro level in the U.S., the fear of people perhaps not traveling as much. They're concerned about not only the economy and their family, but what's going on politically. So um, I think it's the next few years are going to be a challenge for us in our industry, I think. So I hope I'm wrong, but
Agreed.
Agreed.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, coming back off of that, I mean, I know that you mentioned that some of these markets are not coming back as quickly as we might have expected. Um, and that kind of brings a daily operational question to mind, where what percent of this is relationship management and building trust and spending time on an asset, and what percentage of it is the data driven? Okay, it's time to, you know, evaluate this and maybe bring this relationship to a close.
I'm not sure I follow the question. Help me out.
So basically asking like, are you how emotionally attached are you to a certain section of your portfolio, or is it completely just kind of like, no, this it's not performing, it's time to move forward?
Oh, I don't think you can get emotionally attached. So
Spoken like a true
you just
asset manager.
Yep.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it unfortunately too many times where, it's like, oh, this is the first hotel we bought here, or oh, this is in an area that I have a soft spot for. You can't look at it that way. You've got to be as objective as possible, and um, you know, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold 'em,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Remember
I'd
that.
hate to play poker with you.
You would hate to play poker with me.
Uh,
We're gonna bring the cards to a hoa. We'll find a little time at some point.
I
yeah,
was going to
I
say,
think
I think it's Caesar's Palace where I'm staying. So just saying.
Love that. We'll find. Yeah,
We'll find a
there's
table.
yeah, there's a time and a we'll make it happen.
yeah, as you go ahead, I think I
That's
stepped on
good.
your question earlier.
No, I was just going to say I really agree when it comes to extended stay hotels because uh, throughout the course of my career, there was the '09 recession, and extended stay still remained very strong through '09. And then COVID, of course, where a lot of hotels were closing down. The two assets that I was managing still ran 85 to 100% the entire duration of COVID from that March of 2020 until it was deemed gone and there was a new normal. But um, it really is remarkable that there were hotels, big luxury hotels that were closing down in cities, and then you have an extended stay hotel on the side of a highway that was running 100% the whole time. I think I had some things going in my favor. We had the number one largest corporate park in America right in our backyard. So that we had a lot of LNRs that drove business, and that was extended stay business as well. So I think I was like, knock on wood, thank God, I was in a good location through it. But a lot of folks that I know had success through COVID and extended stay as well. So
Well,
I'm happy you said that, because it just kind of doubles down for me that if I ever do become an owner operator, it has to be an extended stay hotel.
Well, to your point as well, through COVID, it's not like, it's not like I really want to go out to a bunch of restaurants. I'd rather, get some food, make it back at the hotel. So I think it definitely bode well, especially for COVID.
It also makes sense from a remote work aspect and just kind of the traveling business person, because this individual is gonna be looking for something that looks a lot closer to an apartment than it does a hotel room. Gone are the days of coming to your hotel room and putting your briefcase on the side couch and just going to sleep. You're looking for more amenities. You want that, that kitchenette, or you'd like to be able to microwave your food at least, because you're going to be eating takeout. You might be eating from the restaurant and bringing it up, and then you've got leftovers. You want to put that in the fridge. So it just makes sense from a operational individual business person standpoint. And I think that that's where the trends are heading. I'd have to agree. That just seems to be what I'm seeing in my role as a BT sales manager. I'm seeing a lot more of my LNRs looking for longer term stays, and it just seems to be what is happening on the ground level.
Yeah, I mean, we have some guests that have, basically lived there, for some of them for years. And, it's for some people it becomes it's an apartment for them. And, the ones that are um poised that have the product and the offerings to make it, like a home for them, it's working out well. And what's interesting, if you think about it, for a while there, nobody was in favor of exterior corridors. Well, COVID kind of brought that back,
Mhm.
because nobody wanted to walk into the lobby and be around a bunch of people, so they could easily park their vehicle right in front of their door. And so our hotels that were in that space did really, really well. And many of them continue to do really well.
It's amazing.
And maybe Yaz and I'll be partners one day. We'll do an extended stay hotel. What do you
I
think?
like it.
Consider it done. But I think you have the experience of launching a brand, so I think you're the perfect fit. Now
Well, and
that
you've got the
actually
patience to be
would be good. Um, I wonder. So you guys have a large portfolio. What's your favorite asset, or a couple of your favorite assets? I mean, we had the opportunity to stay at the Grand Duca, which was an independent hotel, amazing to say the least. So that was one that stuck out to us. Can you tell us about some of yours? Some of your favorites?
well, and I have not been to the Grand Duca since the renovation of the public space just got done, but I did see some pictures and it looks amazing. So make sure you head over there and check out the bar and restaurant. Maybe we'll have to meet up for a little dinner and a drink over there to check it out. You know,
I like it.
official
Lock it
business.
in. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I would say some of my favorites over the years have been properties we had in California. We had um, a Hilton that was on Harbor Island. That's probably one of my favorites, just because it was a place that, for me, at the end of the day, you sit on your balcony and just look at the water and just relax and go for a nice walk or whatever. So that was probably my favorite over the years. We have a property today in Santa Monica, which is I love that because I can, walk over and be looking at the ocean out my window and maybe walk over, do a little shopping and a little fine dining. So that's another
Love it.
favorite of mine. And yeah, I mean, we had properties in Seattle. For me, it's all about kind of the destination has a lot to do with it, obviously, but a lot of it, and most of the times it's the teams I remember. It's the general managers that have been at those properties. In fact, two of the hotels I mentioned, it was the same general manager that had ran both of those, and so he holds a soft spot in my heart. But at the end of the day, it goes down to relationships, right? I mean, I
Yep.
still am in touch with the bell captain at Holiday Inn we used to own in Los Angeles, and just because he's just such a great person and always looked after me so well and so many ways. So, you know, that's just one of those things that hotel's special to me because of
Love
the
that.
team that was there.
Amazing. I love it. Love hospitality. Like you can take I mean, you can get removed from hospitality, but the love that you have for it is something that just doesn't go away. It's been since we've converted over to vendor side and I'm not doing hospitality on the day to day, you still do get that itch a little bit. You still do get that like, creating those memorable moments for folks that keep them coming back at the end of the day. Outside of just I feel like hospitality with technology, I think like a lot of folks are like just like text message warriors now, whereas opposed that human touch, that human element, like technology is good for hospitality because it could streamline things. But I hope that those memorable moments that are created by people never cease at the end of the day because I think that is really um that's the future. It's what it always has been, and that's the future as well. I feel that the art of hospitality is something that really impacts folks. You're helping folks through their weddings, through their big days, through a big corporate event. Maybe it's their first banquet, first whatever, right? But the opportunity to serve those folks is something that you know is amazing. And I feel like that's always been my love for hospitality is that you get to um just create those memorable moments and it's hard sometimes not being not doing it day to day, but it's also wonderful creating like a platform that can be utilized by the folks to enhance their day. And that kind of hopefully is like, part of our mission of giving back and, staying plugged in at the end of the day.
Yeah, you think about it, maybe that QR code is supposed to make it more convenient for you to order your meal, but is that really creating a memorable experience for you? You're missing that human element, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and I think you're right. There's something special about the hospitality business and the people that are in it. And my friends and I in the business say this all the time that there's nothing like our industry for creating lifelong relationships because at the heart of it all it is about hospitality and looking after each other and looking while we look after our businesses. It's that whole piece that keeps us so addicted. Like
mhm.
I'll always remember, yeah, it's how I met you the first time sitting behind you in that church that we were in Charleston, where we were listening to that great music, but kind of giggling a lot and having a good time, right? I'll always
Yep,
remember
yep.
that.
It was wonderful. Honestly, that's why I'm so excited for it's like it's been too long. I missed you. I think when I'm trying to think, what was it the sales meeting last year that I've seen you since, but it just feels too long. So I'm really looking forward to getting
I
to
don't think
catch up.
we've
It's
gotten
gonna
it
be wonderful.
since Charleston,
No, no, no.
New Orleans.
What a
New
wonderful.
Orleans better watch.
Oh yeah, seriously. Well, how wonderful. Have you ever been to the Charleston place prior to that?
I had not.
What a beautiful property. You'd feel like it was from like early 1900s. The building itself was so like historic. I felt like grand. I think is the right
Yeah.
word. Like you walked into that lobby and you knew. You're like this is very different. And yeah, I mean that's
Can't wait to
hospitality
see
though.
it. Apparently,
Mhm.
they've done a major renovation there that's I don't know if it's done yet. I think it might be, but I think we have to, make sure that there's another meeting that we get sent to and have to go to.
Now, here I have a question for you because I've done renovations from the operator perspective. But how is it to manage through those renovations from the asset side? Like, is that a challenge once all the soft goods or any of the things that are being replaced? Uh, Tell me, I'd love to know from your side how it was going through all the renos.
Probably one of the biggest challenges of my career has been, doing renovations. There, there's something about I don't, you have all these different players that come in that often you're not in control of. You do your best to pick the best contractor or the best architect, designer, and all that, but you're really, um, kind of at their mercy to a certain extent. And then, if you're in a big city, like I did a renovation one time where I was in a large city and there was all these um, people who had their own interests at heart, and frankly, it was a not a good experience, and it was things that you couldn't avoid. They all of a sudden were asking you to do things that weren't not in your scope of work and were not in your budget, and you aren't going to go get anything done if you don't play ball. And I mean, I'm going to have to go see my shrink after this to but probably one of the most traumatic experiences is a large renovation I did that should have been a small renovation.
Oh no, oh no.
Moving
Yeah.
to the topic, I'm getting very now.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm sorry for the question. I'm sorry.
Well, at risk, I don't want to press the question too much because it sounds like it was a traumatic history for you. But where is that line for a property to be, in potentially dire need of a renovation, but your owners or your operators are not quite ready to make the jump just yet? It becomes a balancing act at a certain point in time. And when do you pass that threshold? How do you know it's time?
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head about, one of the most probably the biggest challenge of being an asset manager is, you've got to make sure that you believe that the work that's going to be done is going to enhance the asset. And, you've got to make that argument to your ownership groups. And, a lot of times they're reticent to do that project. And so you've got to be confident in what you're presenting and show the need. I always say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? That's the biggest thing that I use when I'm trying to convince our owners to make an expenditure is I'll show them, make sure I've been out to the property recently and show them the pictures and say, look at this. Is this, what you want to experience as a guest? If you don't do this, what's the next bad thing that's going to happen as a result because you haven't put that capital into whether it's preventative or even if it's not preventative, even if it's too far gone, it can get worse. Not to mention the liability. I mean, you've got a big hole in your parking lot, and you've got a guest that stumbles into that and falls and hurts himself. Well, obviously, you've got a big problem. So just making sure they understand all aspects of the risk of not doing it.
Yeah,
A lot of
and
times
part of
we'll override the upside.
and you hit the nail on the head there too with the upside. How much of the conversation is a loss of the potential revenue, or is that not as convincing of an argument?
In a lot of the assets that I oversee, because they're in the economy space, it's a lot of it is just uh, loss avoidance. It's being more, I can't think of the word, but it's not as if it's necessarily customer facing or value enhancement. It's more just trying to keep up with what's expected. It's not something where you can say, "Oh, I put in this beautiful new furniture or these beautiful new TVs, and my guest is going to pay more for that." No, it's the things that need to be done just to make sure your property is keeping up to the basic standard. And so it's not necessarily something that's going to drive your ADR, but it has to be done. Those can be challenging to make that argument sometimes. That's where the pictures come in.
It sounds so stressful.
Well, here goes a long way, right?
Yeah.
It's a gold star. It's a gold star. It's like, listen, if you follow this, gold stars. How many do you want?
That's right.
Love it.
Well, we're coming up, believe it or not, on an hour already, and I think that is a great way to cap it off with a little bit of a horror story, but also we had some time there right before, talking about some of the warm and fuzzies of hospitality, which I always love to end the show with. Again, thank you so much for joining us on the ProTech Podcast. It was really a pleasure to get to chat and just kind of shoot the shit and have a good time. Appreciate you coming by.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dorraine.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Take